Good afternoon. Welcome to the Consolidated Forensic Laboratory. Appreciate everyone coming out this afternoon. We know that there is a lot of interest in the skeletal remains that were recovered from Wayne Place, and so we wanted to make sure that we provided some updates. Before I do that, I want to tell you that under normal circumstances, we do not provide cause and manner of death of individuals prior to providing that information to their loved ones and identifying them. That's normal standard for us. However, in this particular instance, we think it's important to provide an update to community and the public. Before I do that as well, just an update on where we are. We have or are completing our biometric profile of the skeletal remains. That means that we're still trying to identify an age range as well as a stature as well as an ancestry for all of the skeletal remains. And so that is being worked upon now. We are also going to be preparing the skeletal remains for DNA profile so that those profiles can be compared properly. So cause and manner of death. Two of the skeletal remains have gunshot wounds, and one of the skeletal remains has inflicted trauma. Because we are still in an active investigation in the Metropolitan Police Department, we will not be providing information as to the location or body location of those injuries, but suffices to say the injuries that were sustained by another, and therefore those manners of death will be considered homicide. So with that, I'll open up the podium to Chief Newsham.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. I want to thank Dr. Mitchell, the OCME staff at the Department of Forensic Sciences for their hard work as we continue to search for answers. As Dr. Mitchell mentioned, the deaths of these 3 adult females have been ruled a homicide, which means this now becomes a homicide investigation for the Metropolitan Police Department. You will recall last Wednesday on the 25th, officers they recovered skeletal remains of 3 females. Our partners at DC Fire and EMS and the Fairfax County Fire Department provided the assistance of cadaver dogs to thoroughly search the property, both inside and outside of the building, and they were instrumental in assisting us with this discovery. Because mitochondrial DNA testing will be necessary in this case, we have asked the Federal Bureau of Investigation to conduct the forensic testing to identify these victims. That testing may take several months, which is not uncommon in these types of cases. So we hope that you will be patient in waiting for those results. In the meantime, our detectives will have plenty of work to do. They will continue to work to determine if the 3 cases are associated. They will continue to work with our Youth and Family Services Division, looking at missing persons who could potentially these skeletal remains could belong to. And I, most importantly, would like to encourage anybody that's listening, if they have any information that they want to share with us, that they let us know. That piece of information that they bring forward could be critical to us closing this case. Because this is a homicide, there will be a $25,000 reward for each of the victims in this case. So if the cases it ends up being that they are associated, it's up to a $75,000 reward for an individual or individuals that are responsible. We're going to continue to ask the people who live in and around the vicinity of the discovery to be patient. We anticipate that we will be there for a significant period of time. We know this is unsettling for them, but we want to make sure that we do a thorough examination and recover any necessary evidence to bring this case to closure. We can take any questions that you all might have at this time.
From the gunshot wounds, Doctor, would you say that they likely were of the nature that would have caused death?
Yes.
And what type of bullets were used? any idea? And also, was it close range, or were you able to tell that?
We would not be able to tell what type of bullets were used or whether or not it was close range because there's skeletal remains.
You said the third body, there was some type of, what was it, trauma? Can you elaborate more on the one that you did not find the gunshot?
Well, it's inflicted trauma. Because it's a skeleton, there's indeed fractures of the skeleton, but where those fractures lie, we are going to hold until we get further along in the investigations to share.
Can you determine whether they were inflicted prior to death, or could they just have happened after?
The injuries that we have would be what we call perimortem, in and around death, so would have been the cause of death.
So there were 2 gunshot victims, and then the third person is trauma. Is that what we're hearing?
That is correct.
So can you clarify, were the 2 commingled bodies in the shallow grave gunshot victims and the one in the crawl space the inflicted trauma?
I cannot confirm that.
And then can you tell us, either you or the chief, do you believe these 3 homicides are all related?
We have no idea, so we'll have to wait and see. You know, if you're going to talk about common sense, the 2 that were commingled are more likely to be related. Whether or not those 2 are associated with the one in the crawl space, we just don't know at this point.
Chief, were there any personal effects found with the 2 that were in the grave?
There was some personal items that were recovered, but and this is the thing that we're really going to have to beg your patience on. That type of detail surrounding injury or evidence that was recovered, putting that information out publicly could negatively impact our criminal investigation. And we're not holding that back to be opaque. We're trying to be as transparent as we can be. At the same time, we have some families that have lost a loved one, and we have a responsibility to hold somebody accountable for that. And we wouldn't want to do anything that negatively impacts that investigation. And putting out that type of information we have seen in the past can negatively impact a criminal homicide investigation.
Can you say whether those personal effects are helping you with your ID?
Absolutely. Every piece of evidence is going to be helpful. And if we thought there was a personal effect that someone in the public might recognize as belonging to their loved one, we would certainly share that, but we don't have anything of that nature.
Are you any closer to figuring out how long those bodies might have been there?
At this point, we don't know. So a lot of that will be dependent upon the investigation.
Is there any
And
way to find
hopefully,
out?
excuse me for 1 second, hopefully when we get the results of the DNA testing, we could possibly have a match there.
Is there any way to find out whether or not these bodies were tied, bound? Is there any way of looking at that?
At this point, there's nothing to suggest that was the case.
How about clothing? Were they clothed when they were buried?
I can tell you that we have recovered some clothing, but we can't talk about specifics.
Have you narrowed down a time frame maybe for how long, like from this year to this year or something like that?
I think the time frame that we're working from right now is they have been there for at least 1 year, and then going back to we don't know when. So it's a pretty significant time period. The investigation will narrow that gap, you know, looking at the few pieces of evidence that we have, and then we're very hopeful that the DNA will lead us to an identity in at least one of the victims,
So Chief,
if not all of them.
so Chief, or Dr. Mitchell, can you tell us what you all found that makes you think these remains have been there for at least a year or more?
Well, the decomposition process to allow for someone to get to a skeletal remain only without the soft tissue, it puts us in a year or more. So the fact that there's no soft tissue at all puts us in that position of it has to be at least a year. And then beyond that, again, as the chief said, it's very difficult for us to narrow down. We're going to need the investigation to proceed and or an identity to be established for us to ensure a particular time frame.
Dr. Mitchell, how about the time between the 2 commingled bodies and the body in the crawl space? Do you believe they were all time and death the same general time, or is there a gap between those?
Yeah, so there's nothing to make us believe that those skeletal remains are separate and apart in time. They're both very similar in, very similarly looking. So we believe that those probably occurred at in and around the same time. But again, the investigation is going to narrow that down.
Chief, MTD, mitochondrial DNA. What's the special thing about the FBI in that? Why not?
From what I understand, that is a testing that used to be done regionally by the FBI. Because of the lack of the number of requests that they receive, they've actually shrunk down their process, so they only do it at one place right now, the Bureau. So it's a specific type of DNA testing, and it's not, there's not that many requests where you have general DNA labs that do that kind of work, so it's very specific.
Chief, are you confident that no more remains are down in that area right now?
We're still out there. We're going to continue to do our due diligence. We're going to do the best we can. Not all of the skeletal remains from those 3 bodies have been recovered, so there still are some pieces of the body that have not been located and may never be located. It's very difficult to locate these things, but we will do everything we can to try and see if there's additional remains on the scene. So that's why I anticipate that we will be there for some period of time.
Do you have any persons of interest?
Not at this point.
And then, Chief, I know how much you love talking about evidence and ongoing investigations, but given that there are gunshots that the doctors determined, was there any ballistics evidence also found that support the gunshot wound finding of the?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about specific evidence in the case. So,
Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Love, I'm assuming is looking into all this and working with this. How long will it be before composite sketches will actually be distributed, if at all? How long will it take?
We are, I'm not confident that we'll be able to generate composite sketches in this particular case. But when we finish the age range and the stature, that information will be provided to Metropolitan Police Department, and as they see fit, if that information needs to be provided to the public to help them identify who these individuals are, then we'll do so.
And why is that you don't think, you're not confident that you'll be able to do that reconstruction?
Well, these reconstructions require a certain level of intactness of the head or the skull. They also require a particular expertise in clay and reconstruction. Some of that we will not be able to tell in this particular case.
So is that because, and you say gunshot wounds in the skull, is that because they were shot in the head?
So I can't confirm where exactly they've been shot, as I described before.
all right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we ask an off-topic question?
Yeah, go ahead.
To the extent that you can say, could we assume that no one has come forward or the detectives have not found any hint of someone that may be missing that could be a candidate?
We have some missing persons cases that we're looking at, and we've been in contact with those families. Part of the identification process will require us getting DNA samples from family members, and that has already been underway with missing folks that we have in the district. So,
Chief, can you give us anything on the double murder yesterday in Southeast?
we have an image of a car, I believe it's a Honda sedan, that fled from the scene. It looked like a black male who was wearing a white T-shirt was the passenger in that vehicle. And that's all we have at this point with regards to that investigation.
Is there a rideshare involved in this?
There was a rideshare vehicle involved. The driver of the rideshare was not injured. The 2 passengers in the rear of the vehicle, an adult male and an adult female, were both killed.
Chief, the male in that case, Sukarno Turner, was named recently in an indictment involving a corruption case involving your clerk at 7D. How concerned are you right now that some people that may be involved in that case may be targeted because you still have 2 people named in that indictment that are still out, DeJuan Hill and Shay Hazelwood?
There are 2 people, I believe, that are wanted with regards to that indictment, and we are doing what we can to bring them into custody.
What do you have to say about Mr. Turner being murdered? Are you worried that he was
I
targeted?
think that, I have actually had an opportunity to meet with his mom and with his grandmom, and I would say that it's an unbelievable tragedy in our city to lose someone at that age, and they are heartbroken, as are we, to lose somebody on the streets of the District of Columbia in such a violent fashion.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I've got to press you though. He's named in that indictment. Are you concerned? Are you worried that there's someone out there in this gang that this clerk allegedly was involved in feeding information to, maybe targeting?
If we think that someone might be in jeopardy as a result of information that we receive, we will most certainly reach out to those folks to make sure that we provide them safety. We do that on a frequent basis. We receive all kinds of information about people who we believe might be in jeopardy. We reach out to them, make sure that they're okay. The two people that you mentioned in this case right now are wanted right now. I believe that they know that they're wanted, and we are actively looking at them. And maybe the safest place for them would be in our custody at this point.
Would you now be willing to put their photos out?
We'll make a determination. That's an investigative decision we have to make.
Chief, the shooting yesterday on the 50th Street, Rondell Wills, his family seems to believe that it was a stray bullet that hit him. He wasn't the target. Do you have any indication?
Yeah, we haven't got a lot of information in that particular case, and that could very well be. That may be the case, but I can't say with certainty.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.